We haven't used it for that. I know the smaller departments sometimes can, but that's sort of separate from
Okay.
that.
All
I
right.
know what the ones we've applied for here recently for like the victims unit is separate from that. They
That's-
fall
yeah.
under OVC or OVW. That's a
Okay.
whole different
Thank you so
organization.
much. Thank you.
Good, Councilwoman?
Yes.
All right, seeing no further lights, that ends the items on our regular agenda session, and we will move into Public Works and Transportation Committee, chaired by Councilman Mitchell.
Can I have a motion for the minutes? Motion approved. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. We're going to start with transportation. Hello, Mr. Bailey.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman.
Would you please, Madam Clerk, would you please start with, I believe it's 5B, ordinances on first reading?
An ordinance closing and abandoning a portion of the 200 block of Delawana Terrace to allow for construction of future development as detailed on the attached map, subject to certain conditions.
Councilman Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Bailey, is this, I guess, in conjunction with the proposed development, the PUD in this, I think it's in the same area?
Mr. Councilman, to make sure we're talking about, is this mandatory referral 2018-114? The
114.
Delawana Terrace?
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't remember if it's associated with a PUD, but I do believe it's associated with pull out my notes. It's
This may
associated
be a
with,
different-
it is associated with future development by John Wise Properties. And I believe there's development to the south of Delawana Trail. In the property zoned R3.
So y'all have considered it and you don't feel like it's viable piece of
No, sir.
right of way that we need to leave
We did.
open?
As you know, we take these abandonments pretty seriously because they're permanent. In this case, it seemed there was some. I'm not sure how to say. There was survey documentation that indicated that the property was available. It seemed to be a legitimate. There were two different pieces of information. One that seemed to suggest that the property was already available, and one that seemed to suggest that the right of way was bigger than it was shown on a drawing. That was one issue. We're not sure why the right-of-way was so big. It's a local street, doesn't need to be as large as it is, and we didn't see a downside in this partial abandonment.
Okay.
If you need, I can
Y'all are good.
I can confirm the question about the PUD. I don't know if it's associated with another PUD case.
Okay.
Would you like me to do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Seeing no further questions, we can move on to 5C.
An ordinance closing and abandoning the unopened and unnamed right-of-way between the 4300 block of Guild Trail and the 4300 block of Oaks Highway to allow for construction of a retaining wall and adjustment of property lines as detailed on the attached map, subject to certain conditions.
Thank you. Seeing no questions, we're going to move on to ordinances. First reading, please read 6A.
An ordinance closing and abandoning a portion of the 1500 block of Sinclair Avenue at 5131 Sinclair Avenue to allow for construction of a future development detailed on the attached map, subject to certain conditions.
Yes, Black, could you give me some more detail about that particular project, please?
This is another partial abandonment on Sinclair Avenue associated with development down there behind San Lomo Avenue. This is behind the Southern Southery building. And it's just a little clip of right-of-way that's not needed for transportation purposes. and was requested to help clear up some setback issues associated with the development.
So this is a permanent closing?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, we can move on to 6B.
An ordinance amending Chattanooga City Code Part 2, Chapter 11, Section 11381 relating to vending on public park property, and Chapter 20, Article 7, Sections 2146 through 2153 relating to mobile food units.
Councilman Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Attorney, did we get the revision, the amendment included or anything written up so that we could?
The request was made, and Mr. Reisman and Maria was doing that when I left the office here
Okay.
this afternoon.
So it'll be
it'll
ready
on
for 6?
For 6 o'clock tonight, yes,
Okay,
sir.
I just want the council to be aware, I do plan on proposing an amendment at 6 that would just basically incorporate a year review for mobile food trucks, just so that we make sure that it comes back around in a year, and we, much like we did the short-term vacation rentals.
And that'll be a revised version on your agenda for tonight.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
It might already be revised because I see revised, and we did
It-
get this, did get a revision shortly before this meeting, so it
Yeah.
might already be there.
Okay.
Councilman Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It was brought to my attention, and I apologize for missing this. Phil, we have a sponsor on this bill. Can we make sure that Councilwoman Coonrod is listed with it?
Will, yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
All right, sir.
I see no other questions on the food trucks. If there are no others, thank you, Mr. Bailey.
Thank you.
We'll now move to Public Works. Hello, Mr. Holland.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman.
Good to
How are
see
you?
you.
Thank you.
We'll start with resolutions today. Public Works, it looks like G.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Public Works to enter into an agreement with HDR Engineering, Inc. for professional services relative to contract number W17015101 MBWWTP tank safety upgrades, a non-consent decree project for an amount not to exceed $191,900.
Okay. Let's move on to H.
A resolution to approve change order number 2 for Brown and Caldwell relative to contract number W12021101, South Chickamauga Creek 5 Subbasin SSES, a consent decree project for an increased amount of $25,560 for the revised contract of amount of $1,100,192.50.
Everybody okay? All right. Let's move on to I.
A resolution authorizing the award of contract number M18001-201 to West Roofing Systems, Inc. of Tunnel Hill, Georgia, replacement roofing system for Warner Park Maintenance Building in the amount of $42,975 with a contingency amount of $500,000 for an amount not to exceed $47,975.
Seeing no questions, Jay, please.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Public Works to execute a consent to assignment of all purchase orders for vendor number 867412 for Amic Foster Wheeler and Infrastructure, Inc. to Wood Environment and Infrastructure Solutions, Inc. relative to the described purchased orders.
I don't see any questions, but I sure would like to know what this is about.
It is phrased a little oddly, I'll give you that. So this is really to clean up an administrative issue where Wood Environment and Infrastructure Solutions, Inc. purchased Amic, Foster, and Wheeler, and we have contracts with Amic, Foster, and Wheeler, so it's just to allow us to pay them and record all those payments accurately. So we had a company who we are currently in business with who was sold and purchased by Wood Environment and Infrastructure Solutions.
But you do anticipate that the new owners will continue their contract?
They are continuing their contracts right now. There's not been any interruption in services. It was just to clean up administratively to allow us to pay them.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
thank you. Seeing no other questions, I believe it's K.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Public Works to execute an agreement with Stephen D. Billingsley, DBA Billingsley Architecture relative to contract number P18001101, limited renovations at Police Annex for an amount not to exceed $36,400.
Anybody want to know what we're doing at the police annex? Oh, okay.
So we have entered into an agreement with an architect firm to help the police department redesign parts of the annex. There's a couple of police officers here to speak, but I'm not sure any of them know exactly what the scope will be. They'll be working with this architectural firm to do some renovations. And I would invite the police department as our customer in this case, if you have information about it, or maybe we could update council later if you don't. What's that? What's that? Yeah. Oh, no.
Actually, this is sort of outside my scope generally of operations, so I'm looking forward to come on up here. Yeah, this is outside my scope.
Well,
You're welcome.
thanks. From what I understand, there will be some heat and air work that has been asked for a long time, as well as some work looked at to help make a couple of the rooms, particularly the fingerprinting room and the room where, gosh, what are they? The folks who are looking at not yes, yes, that the comms folks where they are is very, very small and is about the size of like an old server room. So looking at finding better ways to accommodate the people in those rooms.
All right.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you, Chief. Chief.
All right, seeing no other question, we'll move to next week's resolutions. Let's go to 7L, please.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Public Works to enter into an agreement for the closure, post-closure plan for the City of Chattanooga Solid Waste Processing Facility with the State of Tennessee Division of Solid Waste Management by deleting an amount not to exceed $36,480.79 and substituting in lieu thereof an amount not to exceed $37,137.44.
No questions? Okay. Councilman Smith.
Thank you, sir. All right, Justin. So we're authorizing it, but we're also just deleting some language. So is this just an update?
So this is a change every year for the it's the annual inflation adjustment that the Financial Assurance Department of the Department of Environment and Conservation evaluates each of our processing or disposal sites and makes adjustments to the to our contract in lieu of performance bonds. So we reserve funding to do required cleanup or closure of any solid waste processing or disposal facility, and that rate is adjusted annually. This is presented each year as the state requires that adjustment.
So I understand that for the next item, because it's a resolution to amend. This one is authorizing you to enter into agreement, but it also says by deleting. So we're entering into an agreement, and then by deleting the amount not to exceed, it just seems like this would be an amendment to an existing agreement if we're changing language. I just want to make sure that was the same thing we're talking about.
Can I staff that with the attorney and
absolutely.
Ms. Madison after the meeting?
Yeah.
Make sure
just-
that's
and
accurately,
it's on next week.
accurately stated.
I just wanted to make
Yes,
sure
sir.
that was clear. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilman. Okay, I believe that was L, and we haven't read M yet, so would you please read M?
A resolution to amend resolution number 29117 as adopted on July 25th, 2017, relative to the agreement for the closure post-closure plan for the city landfill with the State of Tennessee Division of Solid Waste Management by deleting an amount not to exceed $1,657,448.95 and substituting in lieu thereof an amount not to exceed $1,619,791.71.
Councilperson Burrs.
Justin, it looks like L, M, N, and O are all about the same issue, and that to keep us legal, we have to get the amounts correct. Is that,
That is correct. So it is
so
an
this is
administrative
more of an
function.
editing thing than anything else?
Right, and to Councilman Smith's question, whether or not there was a resolution prior to the contract with our solid waste processing facility, which is our household hazardous waste operation, I will review and make sure that that's accurate. It appears that we may not have previously had a resolution, or that the state has newly required a similar type of performance bond at those types of facilities that they do at the landfill locations, where we previously had resolutions authorizing for those amounts to be appropriated.
We've done a lot with the landfills, and there's been a lot of money attached, but I don't remember something like L, M, N, and O previously. What we're correcting, I don't remember previously. And it may have been just something that happened, because I remember we've done a lot with landfills. I just don't remember this form.
These items come up annually.
That's what I thought.
The state notifies us of an inflation amount. We submit to the state all the, everything that we've done at the landfill, and this is to ensure that the landfills can be environmentally sound, and that the city is financially in a situation to manage the environmental issues that come along with landfills. So this is an annual inflation update.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Turner, you have something to add to this?
Yeah, just briefly, the paperwork associated with this has got a reference that in 2018, the state basically has changed the annual inflation amount that has to be included in here, and that's the reason for the amounts being $400 or $500 different in here. And it is a letter that was sent to the mayor on July the 13th, and they're saying effective this year, we have to have this amount in holding for our performance bonds. So that's the reason for the change on all of these.
Does the council see the need to read the next two? They'll go into the record this evening in the council meeting.
That's on next week.
Oh, that is next week, I'm sorry. Better go ahead. Ann, please.
A resolution to amend resolution number 29118 as adopted on July 25th, 2017, relative to the agreement for the closure post-closure plan for the city landfill lateral expansion area 3 with the State of Tennessee Division of Solid Waste Management by deleting an amount not to exceed $7,572,618.31 and substituting in lieu thereof an amount not to exceed $7,708,925.44.
Well, I'm glad you read that, because we have two lights. Councilman Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mine actually is in reference to the city attorney's response. So Phil, my question,
Yes.
I understand why we're having to make the change. We've got three of these that are resolutions to amend resolution, which makes perfect sense to what you stated.
Yes.
L, the wording of L is the part that I just was unclear about, because we're entering into an agreement and then also deleting language.
Okay.
It's
And it probably should have the same reference for all of those captions in connection with this, because it looks like every one of these came out a letter dated July the 13th for all three of these items here from the state of Tennessee at that point in time. And they included a document that was to be involved, an amendment of contract in lieu of performance bond on each of those. So that's the reason for the language. Item L probably should have the same type of language. I'll check into that.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, please. I'd
will.
appreciate it. Thank
Yes.
you.
Councilman Gilbert.
Just a question. Justin, once we close a landfill, it will be an ongoing monitoring until now, in a sense, correct?
Well, there is a post-closure period of a landfill. There's a closure and then a post-closure period for a landfill. Once you close the landfill, you are responsible for the landfill for, I believe, 30 years. And I would go back and make sure that that's accurate. So we are responsible for those landfills for the next several decades, monitoring wells, monitoring the groundwater, ensuring that there's no problems that occur to surrounding communities. We have a closed landfill at Summit. We have a closed landfill at 36th Street, and we have an active landfill at Birchwood with adjacent to a closed landfill portion at Birchwood, all with their own types of activities and problems that we continue to address. Just this year, the council appropriated about $500,000 to address flare issues and monitoring well issues at Summit Landfill, which has been closed for nearly 2 decades.
You mentioned 36th Street, correct?
Yes, sir.
Do we still monitor that, correct?
We have some wells, so there are some the monitoring requirements and maintenance requirements as the landfill ages reduce drastically. That is a landfill, I believe, that's been closed more than 30 years.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, sir.
Is that it? Please read O.
A resolution to amend Resolution Number 29119 as adopted on July 25th, 2017, relative to the agreement for the post-closure plan for the Summit Sanitary Landfill with the State of Tennessee Division of Solid Waste Management by deleting an amount not to exceed $1,848,183.34 and substituting in lieu thereof an amount not to exceed $1,710,409.68.
All right, so on these items, we just have the issue on L, and you're going to
Yes, sir.
fix that if necessary.
It looked like the last two of these are adopted by resolutions that were passed in 2017. I'm gonna have to check and see what the resolution for the first one was in item L.
Okay. Any more questions? Thank you, Justin.
Thank you.
If not, I know he's anxious to get up here. He loves coming up here. Councilman Ledford, it's time for
Planning and zoning.
planning and zoning.
Can't believe it's been a month.
Right, the moment everyone's been waiting for. I welcome you to our Planning and Zoning Committee meeting. If I can get approval. Thank you very much. All right, we have a second. Good afternoon, Mr. Bridger.
Good afternoon.
How are you?
I'm doing fine.
Good. It's hot out there,
It is hot.
and it's cool in here, so we're happy to be here. Karen, we are not going to read these and let John run through the cases. You are welcome. And we're going to start off with, are you ready, John?
Yes, anytime
All right,
you are.
We're going to start off with 2018-133 under planning.
Okay. This is a request to rezone a property located at 722 Spears Avenue from R1 residential zone to ERD2. So it's moving from the standard zoning code to form-based code. And again, the RD2 means residential detached, 2 stories max, for basically to accommodate a garage that's proposed to be built with a dwelling unit above it for existing home. There's already, so I go to the next slide, you'll see, this is working, hopefully. Okay, maybe that's on. Okay, so I need you to push it. Thank you. So you see the form-based code, existing zoning to the east, immediately adjacent to the site. So this is an extension of form-based code. Again, it's single family. It's an ERD, which is detached, which is more restrictive than ERA. So it's consistent with the single-family character that's found along Spears Avenue. So for that reason, staff is recommending approval of the request because it's consistent. It's an extension of form-based code and it's consistent with the single-family character along Spears Avenue. There was no opposition at Planning Commission, so both Planning Commission and staff recommend approval.
I am seeing one light. Let me ask one quick question before I hand it over to Councilman Henderson. John, can you talk a little bit about, we keep hearing, seeing the cases where form-based code is being asked for because it's adjacent to other form-based
Sure.
code. At what point do we draw a line, so to speak?
Right now, the boundary demarcation is as I recall, I have to look at the muni code to confirm, but I believe it's the downtown plan. As long as within that confines, and there are some rules for how you consider extension, either has to be immediately adjacent or within a certain distance, I think it's 300 feet, to be considered as an extension for form-based code. But right now, as I recall, it's limited by the downtown plan area.
Okay. I know I've had several people ask me, just
Yep.
because it's adjacent, where do we stop? Where do we start? And so I appreciate that clarification.
Sure.
Councilman Henderson, please.
Yeah, John, mine's kind of a similar question. If you'd go back to the site map, maybe there.
This one?
That one, yeah. Obviously, everything coming off of North Market is in the form-based code, but
Yes.
Now we're starting to creep back into the residential in the neighborhood. Do you see it when you were talking about this, and staff recommended approval because it is adjacent, but do you
Sure.
see it coming south on Spears or north? I mean, the form-based code, because, and obviously the draw is the
ADUs.
ADUs. Thank
Yep.
you. Have y'all talked internally about future recommendations if it continues on down Spears?
I mean, I think we would continue to look at it on a case-by-case basis. Clearly, the ideal situation is you'd have, a plan done that kind of really updates the policy for the area, and that would really determine how far you extend form-based code. But I do know, actually, we're going to be briefing you, kind of a little bit of the cat out of the bag. In September, we're going to present you some thoughts on an ADU special permit that might be citywide, which I'm sure there'll be some more further discussion that'll come when we present at your committee next month on that. So at this point, on our end, we do, as long as if you're still maintaining the single-family residential detached character, I do know that ADUs is a little different, that you can get an additional unit. But as you know, right now, all you have to do is attach it, and you can do it by right in R1 anyway. So checked out with my LDO team on that. That's correct, right? If it's attached by a breezeway, you can do an ADU. So it's already by internal policy something you can do now anyway. So I think what's good about the form-based code is it has more parameters about the size of the ADU can be, where it's located relative to the primary structure, and how you handle parking. So at least from a staff perspective, again, unless you all want to give us some more feedback as a council, I personally don't see an issue with RD in an urban residential setting.
Well, I'm just curious as to what your staff, and I'm not saying I disagree, I'm just trying to figure out your thought process as to why you extended it to Spears.
It's an extension of form-based code, and so it's consistent with our current code. I think the other thing, I guess what's unique about this particular building, it actually fronts on Peak Street, which shares in common the properties, the residential structures to its immediate east. So it's very consistent with the development on the east-hand side. It doesn't cross the street at Spears. For that reason, we don't see an issue with it. Now, I will say this, and this is something we'll talk more about at the council briefing in September. Clearly, as you look at adding more structures on the lot, you have to think carefully about impacts on stormwater, impacts on overall site coverage, of a lot. How much is too much, and that's something we'll talk a little bit about in September with the new tool that we're proposing. So until then, we're going on the guidance we have currently, which is, as you know, we recently updated the form-based code, and it had some standards for how you consider extensions of that code. So we're using that as a tool, unless you all provide us some additional feedback otherwise.
Well, I was just wondering if somebody across the street from Spears, I mean, would you consider that an extension, crossing the street?
Yes, I would.
You would? Okay. I just you know, I just want, maybe at some point, we maybe need to have a briefing on
Sure.
what,
Well, September might open that up a little bit when we talk about ADUs as a citywide tool.
yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Henderson. I think you're seeing a pattern of concern, I guess. It seems like that, John, our questioning is with the adjacent of form-based code. Where does it stop? Where does it start? Seems
Sure.
to be popping up a little bit more often.
Yes, it is.
So I
Yep.
appreciate your comments by Councilman Henderson as well. Next case, 2018-137, please.
Yes, this is in the Hickson community, just north of the Cassandra Smith Hickson Pike intersection. As you recall, back in 2017, we recently rezoned this site to R3 to accommodate apartment development. What they're requesting is to lift, or actually to modify a condition. There's a condition, I'm gonna go to the site plan. As you see in this site plan here, there is a condition to basically buffer the front half of the development with a 10-foot yard and 20-foot to the remainder of the rear. After they've done some more site engineering, actually that 20-foot buffer that would happen further to the back would conflict with the retaining wall, so they just wanted to do a 10-foot buffer throughout the entire property. So let me go to that actual request. You can read it. Where is it at here? Give me a second. Let's see. Here it is. If you read at the bottom, it would be a 10-foot buffer. So it still has to do the buffer throughout on the northern property and the southern property line, but it's a 10-foot buffer throughout as opposed to a 20-foot that would have happened to the rear. So all we're doing is modifying that one condition from 20 feet to 10 feet. And there was no opposition at Planning Commission, and both staff and Planning Commission recommend approval.
Thank you, John. I'm seeing no lights. Chairman Smith, good? Very good. All right, we'll move on to 2018-118.
Okay. All right, this is a request to rezone a property from R1 to C2 for an animal rescue organization. And currently, in our zoning code, the only type of zone or district you can do that use in, because it's considered like an animal kennel of sorts, is C2. Again, this is located in the 8400 block of East Brainerd Road. To give you another landmark, Covenant Presbyterian Church is across the street to the north. If you look at the land use pattern, you do see that while you do have the institutional church across the street to the north, it is surrounded by a single-family residential. The zoning is also all R1. There is an R4 on the corner at Givens Road and East Brainerd Road, and there's a C2 further east. But that's focused around the node at, oh gosh, what's the name of the road? Morse Hill Road, Morse Hill and East Brainerd Road.
Yeah, I know that one very well, John.
Yeah, great. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Commissioner. So you can see there were a couple cases to rezone to commercial, but again, what we're trying to do is limit that primarily to the intersections, because that's something that the plan, let me go back to the plan. The plan recommends office and institutional uses as a transition along this block, so we don't strip out all of East Brainerd Road as commercial. That was one of the key themes of the plan, was trying to retain commercial at the existing nodes. I do think one of the challenges of this case is, unfortunately, we don't have a non-commercial zone for an animal hospital. So that's kind of the conundrum we're in, where the use may not be an issue, but the zone is not the best fit in the world. And that's why our staff's recommendation, to be consistent with the plan, was to recommend denial, to, again, keep C2 out of this block. However, there was no opposition at Planning Commission, and then Planning Commission determined that the proposed use was compatible with the development form of the area, so they recommended approval with some limitations, that the proposed use be for animal rescue for cats only, so no ferrets, just cats. I'm being silly. No additional parking pads and signage to be on the building only.
I'm seeing no lights, so if it's okay, this is in my district. John, when we also noted that the report to the neighbor from the neighbors was actually, we were told, supportive for this effort.
Okay.
No additional parking was extremely important. With the plan along the new section of the recently widened East Brainerd Road, we are seeing some challenges, and we will continue to see challenges because there is businesses in the office type, if you will, definition that are not covered in O.
Right.
And we're seeing them fall strictly under C2, which we all commonly refer to as the Wild West. So I think limiting this to the conditions helps to promote the use that was probably intended in office, because there are several those types of businesses along the East Brainerd Road. So I have no other further questions. If the council has any questions for me, I'd be glad to answer any. Seeing none, we will move on.
Okay.
2018-140.
Yes, this is a request to rezone from R4 special zone to C4 planned commercial zone for expansion of an office and retail development. If we can pull up to the zoning map, you'll see that there's already some existing C4 to the south. It was rezoned about a year or so ago for expansion of a kind of a shopping center that would include a grocery store in the back. If you look at the site plan, let me go to the site plan, you'll see again Shalford Road on the front. You see that basically they're proposing those dark gray buildings are on the front are office, and in the back you've got the retail center to the rear. One of the things that, again, in staff and looking at this, we consulted the Hamilton Place plan, which I know is old, but I think one of the same principles is still true about transition and trying to minimize any commercial zoning directly across from residential. So if you look at the zoning map currently, you can see we've overall tried to be consistent with keeping that commercial zoning off of Shalford Road and use R4 as a transitional zone that allows apartments and offices, doctor's offices, that kind of thing. The applicant is requesting to rezone that to C4 with conditions, and they would basically take the same conditions that were applied to the C4 in the back and apply them to the front. So staff recommended denial because of again, it was inconsistent with the plan recommendation. However, at Planning Commission, there was no opposition. And as I understand, I think the applicant met with the Neighborhood Association to get their feedback. So Planning Commission, after seeing no opposition, hearing comments from the Councilman, I'm sure Ledford, you've got some comments as well. I think you presented those at the Planning Commission meeting. After hearing all that, Planning Commission recommended approval of C4 carrying forward the conditions in the C4 zone to this property.
Very good. I see no light, so I will comment just real quickly on this. This is actually one project that I think was done by the book to probably most everybody's satisfaction. The community meeting that was held was overwhelmingly impressed with the thoughtfulness of egress and ingress on over to Ogletree, and some of the office buildings actually on your site plan are already scheduled for restaurants, which helps really address the traffic issue, and the community was very positive and very supportive of this change.
Okay.
I see no other lights on that item, so we will continue forward.
Okay. This is a
132.
request to lift condition. This is out in Highway 58 near the Highway 58, Bonnie Oaks and Jersey Pike intersection. If you're familiar with that location off of 153, there's a request to lift a condition limiting the building height of 25 feet. Currently, the property is being developed by a wholesale distributor of beverages, and basically their proposed building is 32.5 feet, so it exceeds the 26-foot height limit by about 7 feet. So they were requesting that condition to be lifted. As you can see on this aerial, the site is currently vacant. There are neighborhoods behind to the north of the site. There's a multifamily development to the west of the site. However, across the street to the south and to the east are commercial developments and industrial developments. Here again is a picture of the site you see here, looking into the property. Here's across the street. Let me go to the zoning map. As you can see here, again, we're not changing the zoning. They're only modifying the condition, that one condition, or it's a request to modify that one condition on this property. Here's the site plan. You can see the primary access is coming off of Bonnie Oaks Drive. You can see a large warehouse building in the rear at 60,000 square feet in the upper left-hand corner. There's another parking area to the east of that, and another building in the front portion of the site. And they're requesting a condition just to lift that one condition of height. As It should be noted that when this property was rezoned, it was done with a lot of community feedback, and those conditions were provided to provide some constraints on what could happen there. So staff, in reviewing that, but I should also note that the plan calls for business technology at this location, so that's consistent with the plan recommendation in terms of having a distributing type facility, having a commercial development at this location. So the use wasn't a question, it's more about the form or the scale, making sure it's consistent with the neighborhood to the rear. So what staff recommended, a couple things. One, we don't think you should just wholesale lift the height condition, but we just recommend increasing it to 35 feet. So that gives them some wiggle room to get the building in as they need to, but not to have anything larger since you've got the housing to the north of the site. The other thing we recommended was to eliminate the first condition because they have to do that anyway as part of the development review process. They have to provide a site plan that shows all their facilities. So that's kind of just creating more red tape that LDO has to track. I know they appreciate when we clean up conditions that they don't have to monitor. So this is just part of normal business. They do a site plan review anyway. So we're recommending to lift that as well. So again, so the staff recommendation was to basically modify the height requirement to 35 from the current 25 feet, and then to strike condition number 1. There was no opposition at Planning Commission. They concurred with staff's recommendation.
Thank you, John. I have one quick question before I go to Councilman Gilbert, just to make sure we're clear. It reads 32.5 feet, but it's 35?
We're suggesting increasing the maximum to 35.
35.
So that way there's a little bit of fudge room, because you know as you go through site, things can change. That gives you a little bit of wiggle room, not to have to worry about coming back before a regulatory body.
Very good. Thank you. Councilman Gilbert.
John, the applicant did meet with the community. He did show them the site plan. Majority of them did not have no issues with it. But I got a concern. Coming up soon, there's another proposal for Jersey Pike in the same exact location.
Okay.
Subdivision.
Okay.
Called Benton something. And I called your office to find out how this going to work out with this coming in and they going to put something in the same location.
Let me go back to the zoning map. Do you know where that is relative to here?
It's right next to the one. My understanding is next to this property on Jersey Pike.
So maybe it's that 01 zone section, but I think that's showing parking or a detention pond facility in the 01 section.
That's why I was asking, because I can't see. Robinwood is near Robinwood.
Maybe it's further north. I can check into
Jersey
it.
Pike.
Yeah, but maybe further north on Johnson. You said at the Jersey Pike Bonnie Oaks intersection? Mm-hmm. Okay. I'll have to look into that.
I appreciate it.
Yep.
Thanks.
Good, Councilman?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. No further lights, John. Let's move on to
Okay.
119.
This is a request to rezone from R4 special zone to C2 convenience zone for a catering business. And the proposal is to reuse the existing building and park 4 to 6 catering trucks at this site. It's located at 4393 Benton Drive, and you can see in the upper corner there, again, Highway 58, 153 intersection. So it's just south of that interchange of 153 and Highway 58 on Benton Drive. Here again, you see the site characteristics. It was the former Firefighters Association building. You see detached single family on the north. There's a church across the site to the south. You got single family residential to the east and west. If you look at the zoning, there is some, R3, R2s, R4s, but no commercial zoning currently along this block. So something we always, again, look carefully about is, when you create a commercial zone in the middle of a block, the precedent, what that means for properties on either side of this location. And as a reminder, it was rezoned in 2010 from R1 to R4 with a number of conditions to allow it to be used for the Firefighters Association. Again, to ensure there was not any commercial uses associated with this development at this location. Let me go back to the plan. The Highway 58 plan recommends low-density residential at this location, so it does not call for any commercial uses along this block. So after looking at the Highway 58 community plan, thinking about the wide variety of uses in C2 that would not be compatible for this location, we recommended to deny the request. At Planning Commission, there was no opposition. Planning Commission found that the use was compatible with the development form of the area. I guess one argument you could say for thinking about the compatibility, there is a church across the street. Although I will say this is really upping the intensity scale. You're going from an institutional office setting to a commercial setting, which I think does change the character of a block. They recommended to approve C5 as a lease. At least it's a more limited commercial use for this property, subject to catering use only and use of the existing structure. So you have two different recommendations. Staff recommended to deny. Planning Commission recommended to approve C5, subject to catering use only and use of the existing structure on the site.
Thanks, John. Councilman Gilbert?
John, I know you said it was a church across the street, but also to the east, there's another church and a daycare.
Yep.
Also, you have a lot of houses surrounding, so that's one of the reasons why the staff is saying deny, because it's changed.
It's just going from, I think, it's one thing to do an institutional, which R4 is designed to do in O1, but C2 and C5, you're going up another level where you're now getting more commercial type uses that have more frequent traffic visiting the site, more activity. You know, again, with catering business, you might have a dumpster on site, people coming and going. So it just, again, it adds another level of activity that could have a negative impact on surrounding single-family residential.
Okay, appreciate it.
Good, Councilman?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. John, seeing no further lights. 139.
Okay. This is a request to rezone from R2 residential zone to C2 convenience commercial zone for development of a retail and service station establishment. This is at 6302 Highway 58. This is an area that was recently annexed by the city a few years back. To give you a couple of landmarks, if you're familiar with the BP gas station and Wolf Teaver Pet Hospital is across the street from this location. You can see Harrison Ottawa Road in the back there. This is the almost, again, it's the end of the city-county line on 58. They're wanting to rezone this property. As you'll see here, the zoning map is one of the few remaining nodes with not already zoned commercial, so you've got a pretty well-established pattern of commercial along this area. As I said, it was annexed in 2012 by the city, and then we added, we rezoned it to the most equivalent zone, which if it was R2A at the time in the county, it would be R2 in the city. So we did not upzone it to commercial as part of that study. This shows the area that was annexed into the city. You can see where that parcel lies. Again, here's a site plan showing the proposed gas station facility and the curb entrances. Again, we would not be approving this site plan. This just shows you that they're currently proposing for the site. So we recommended approval, given the fact that it's on a major commercial arterial, it's surrounded by C2 zoning. We recommended approval, and there was no opposition at Planning Commission. They also concurred with staff's recommendation to approve.
Thank you, John. Councilwoman, are we good? Very good. Appreciate that. Moving on. 112.
Okay, this is a case that was deferred for 30 days. I don't want to add any additional information I've already presented. I'm open to council's comments if they have any comments on this request.
Councilwoman, are you okay? I'm sure you have a comment or two.
Well, yeah, they were supposed to get back with us.
How's that worked out?
Nothing.
Nothing.
So I guess I'll be deferring again.
Yes, ma'am.
They asked for a deferral for 30 days so that they could do some better stuff. I've never seen anything, if you'll remember, and that's where it is.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. John, we're going to move on to 129.
Okay. There we go. This is a request to rezone a piece of property from R1 residential zone to R2 residential zone for construction of duplexes. The site plan submitted indicates 4 new residential dwelling units. If you're familiar with the East Ridge Tunnel, which you see right in the middle of the screen where it says 41, that's the East Ridge Tunnel. This site's right on the side of Missionary Ridge. If you look at the development of the block itself, it's already multifamily. So there's already a precedent for multifamily on this block. The zoning is currently R1, and the reason for that, when we completed the Rossville Boulevard Community Plan, it was basically rezoned in 2004 to R1 to be consistent with the recommendations of that plan. The plan does, though, allow the consideration of duplexes where they are compatible with surrounding development. So while it calls for low-density residential, it says there can be some exceptions made for townhouses, patio homes, and two-family dwellings if density is compatible. In this case, you clearly got the precedence of duplexes and apartments on this block. So because they are already located in this area, staff did not have an issue with rezoning this to R2. So we recommended, here's the site plan showing the proposed apartment structures and drives. Staff is recommending to approve the request because it is consistent with the plan recommendation. I think, again, just another footnote, as you recall, back in the day when we were doing these downzonings, it was more aggressive on the R1. And as you know, we're learning today that there's a greater need for a variety of housing types, and this would allow folks some other housing options on a block that already has apartments. There was no opposition to this request. Planning Commission also concurred with staff that the use was compatible and recommended approval.
Very good. Thank you, John. Councilman Oglesby? Thank you, sir. Seeing no other lights, we will move to 130.
This is another request in Councilman Ogilvy's district. This is a request is rezoned from R1 residential zone to R4 special zone to be used as a professional office space to provide outreach services to veterans. The property is located at the 3200 block of 4th Avenue. It's currently used as a single-family detached dwelling. As you can see, it's surrounded by single family. 4th Avenue is a through street, but the predominant use, as you can see on the slide, and the zoning is R1. So in this case, instead of going to a duplex, you're actually going more to an office type or service type use and zone. So this would be a more dramatic change from R1 to R2 compared to R1 to R4. Here's the site plan. Again, it's not much because they're just proposing to reuse the building. So there's no need for, again, they're planning on not making any changes. They're going to reuse the existing structure in the same drive. Again, here, this is showing the what they're proposing to do. There will be a handicap ramp, I guess, proposed to provide access for the veterans. Again, I want to remind you that we're not adopting the site plan. That review will happen through the permitting process. This is just communicating the intent of the applicant. The Rossville Boulevard plan recommends single-family residential. So staff reviewing this request, again, the concern was establishing a spot R4 zone in the middle of R1. And because of our concern of that, we recommend denial. Didn't have anything against the use per se, but the zone carries with it be a precedent change for that location. So we recommend to deny. There was no opposition at Planning Commission, and based on the merit of what the applicant, who's a resident, I think also a former veteran, wanting to do something to provide support to veterans in the area, Planning Commission recommended approval, subject to it, again, restricting that R4 to be limited to using the single-family detached, using the existing structure and be limited to single-family detached or professional office only, and parking to be located to the rear. So they tried to basically approve R4 with those restrictions. So you get two different recommendations. Staff was to deny, Planning Commission to approve with these restrictions.
Thank you, John. John, do you remember if any of the conditions
That's the site.
discussed use office hours, basically business hours?
Not that I can recall. That certainly, council could certainly add if they so desire.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Oglesby, are you good?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you, John.
Seeing no other lights, we'll move on to 134.
Okay. This is a request to rezone. This is in Highland Park community. Council, I think it's Councilman Bird's district, is that right? District, gotcha. Thank you, sir. To zone from R1 to RTZ for a single-family infill development. As you know, we've seen several of these in the Highland Park neighborhood. They're using RTZ zone to accommodate small lot, single-family detached infill. To give you, again, another location, The Highland Park, the former Highland Park school site is just across the street from this location. You see zoomed in there. They are going to demolish one home on the site. You see to the left, there are 2 houses on the site. They're going to retain the one to the far right. The one on the left will be demolished. And let me show you their proposed site plan. They will be building 3 new structures, retaining the existing structure. And you can see how the lots fit the pattern of the block. So they're not really intensifying development on this block. Their lot pattern is very similar to what's already on the block. And as I said earlier, there have been a number of RTZ rezonings to do similar infill, small lot residential development that's been approved already. Staff recommended approval, subject to some restrictions because RTZ does allow for townhouses and other things that may not be compatible with the neighborhood. So we limited the subdivision to 4 lots, single-family detached residential only, and access from an alley and off-street parking to be located to the rear of the structures. At Planning Commission, there was no opposition, so Planning Commission concurred with staff's recommendation to approve subject to those conditions.
Thank you, John. Councilman Byrd, any comments, sir? No, sir. Very good. Thank you, John, for that presentation. No other lights.
So we got a long list of cases. The good news is there's not many with opposition, so. But we had quite a few cases. This is a request. This is the right next to the Armory site, also Montague Park, off of Holtzclaw Avenue, a request to rezone from M1 to UGC for a mixed-use infill development. Here you can see the site again. It is a industrial commercial area. And I'm just going to jump to the site plan. You can see where they're proposing to do a mix of residential and some retail with some live-work units fronting South Holtzclaw Avenue. So they're requesting UGC. UGC is a good tool for that. It allows you to do tight infill development of an urban character, this is an urban area. That's what we want to see. So staff, in reviewing it, recommended approval. At Planning Commission, there was no opposition, so they concurred with staff's recommendation to approve.
Councilman Byrd, good?
Yes, sir. Yep. You're welcome.
Councilman. Thank you, John. All right, that will now move into an ordinance. John, you want to walk us through O?
Yeah, this is a zoning text amendment, and it's an opportunity to talk how our zoning code is a living, breathing document. We try to keep it up to date. Our definitions do get old sometimes, so I gave you this, sometimes we need to shake the dust off and get it up to date. Having heard some feedback from a Board of Zoning Appeals, there was some confusion about how you treat catering businesses because it's not listed in the zoning code, and it was kind of caught between an office and a home occupation, and it was not clear what it was. So we did some peer research and created a definition to differentiate between a catering business versus a home occupation and an office. And the main concern there is, as you know, with catering businesses, you have the food component, you got dumpsters, which can create smell. You also got the added potential fire hazard if you're not careful with, fryer, kitchen, and all that. So you do need to treat them differently. So what we did is we added a definition for catering, and you can see that's in section 1 of your ordinance, which says a catering service is a business establishment in which the principal use is the preparation for food and meals on the premises, and where such food and meals are delivered to an off-premise location for consumption. So it's pretty clear what it is. The other thing we tried to do to make sure there was no confusion between a home occupation and catering or an office is that we modified those definitions to say that catering is not considered a home occupation or an office. So it's kind of double bookended on both sides, so they can't be confused. So we did that, and just showing you in the professional office definition what it used to be, and we just added a sentence stating what that catering services are not included in that. Sections 4, 5, and 6 of your ordinance, they add catering service as a permitted use in C2, UGC, and C5. One change I do want to note, currently in the ordinance, sections 7, 8, and 9 add catering service as a permitted use in form-based code. I think we've learned through doing some more research that is already addressed in form-based code. So this might actually create some confusion in adding this additional language. So what I would recommend is strike section 7, 8, and 9 from the ordinance, and so you'll be only taking actions on sections 1 through 6.
Thank you. Thank you, John. This came out of a request, I believe, started at BOZA,
That's right.
where they were seeing cases and very confused on the type of direction
Yep.
that they were to, due to the language we were currently experiencing. So I thank you for your work on that. That concludes our listed items on our agenda. But John, we've got an airport district plan?
Yeah,
You're
just
gonna
to give
update
you.
us on?
Sure, we are in the process working with the Chattanooga Airport Authority and procuring a consultant to do an airport district plan. As we all know, the airport is growing fast, and a lot of visitors come through that airport, and that creates their first impression of our city. As well as we know that the airport could be a good job generator. We've already seen some growth, airport companies coming into the area. So we want to, I would say the third element that we got to also balance with this is you got neighborhoods. There's the Shepherd community, which is right adjacent to the airport. So we got to do this in a smart way. So we want to go through a planning effort to balance the future growth of the airport, beautification of the corridors along Airport Road and the Shepherd Road that approaches the airport, how we can promote the best economic use of those locations as well as protecting the neighborhood. So got some stuff to work on. We'll be presenting a resolution to you in a few weeks to basically just kick the study off. It's formally asking us to do the study, and we'll come back to you with the results of that once it gets underway. So that's that.
Thank you, John. I want to also ask, if I may, we've got a lot of planning going on, and I know your staff has
Yes.
been a bit stretched with all the tasks at hand. How are we doing on the steep slopes, high
Sure.
water areas that Councilman Mitchell and I have asked
Sure.
report?
We've had several meetings with the Land Development Office, and it's been a great team effort. To kind of break it down into sort of 3 buckets that we're looking at, there's kind of I call the zoning policy side, which is on the front end. When we look at PUD requests or rezone requests, how do we appropriately deal with that in a zoning ordinance review when somebody's proposing to change zone? The other is when I'm wanting to clear a piece of property, making sure there's some due diligence in terms of thinking about structural integrity of the slope, timing for when new construction is going to take place. So the things that happen when you're trying to do a land disturbing permit on a steep slope that we might want to do a little differently. And the last part deals with enforcement. And that's when folks, construction management is not occurring like it should, and what are the enforcement penalties for not doing what you're supposed to in terms of on-site construction management. I will say LDO is already doing a lot of the 2 and 3. They've been hard at work already implementing some changes to make sure those are best practices moving forward. What our plan is to do some one-on-ones with the resolution sponsors to kind of give an overview. We're then going to have a development stakeholder meeting to meet with folks who who do development in the field to make sure we understand from their perspective what's going on. Then we're going to have a public hearing, I would estimate sometime in September. And that's where we would present kind of our initial findings in terms of the issues and challenges and some potential tools to address them. And with the goal of that would be to get public feedback on those options so you can hear that as a council before directing us as staff which way to go in terms of a tool solution. So that's kind of the plan of attack. We've made some progress in identifying some potential tools, but before we get too far and writing a lengthy document, our code fix, I think it's better to get some feedback from the community on what fits, and then we'll go to work on the details of those specific tools.
Very good. I would like to see if Councilman Mitchell has any further comments since we were co-sponsors on that in that request. Good? Okay, thank you, sir. I do have a light for Councilman Gilbert.
I'm just going back to what you was talking about. Speaking of Shepherd Road and Airport Road.
Yes, sir.
How far on Airport Road? The reason I'm saying that, I know we're in the process of widening intersection of Airport to Jersey Pike, which is Shallowford Road. Are you going that far up, or are you just going towards?
It's pretty extensive. I'll give you some general boundaries. think of the airport campus property on the west. So, so think almost all the way to the creek, South Chick almost Creek, down to Lee Highway to the south, over to, so you follow Lee Highway all the way out to the Highway 153 interchange, then follow 153 all the way up to Shallowford Road and back across. So it includes a portion, not all of Shepherd Community, but a portion of Shepherd Community in that.
You saying back to Shallowford Road?
Yes, sir.
So that's including that project that Blight is doing with that 5 lanes. He didn't get that. That 5 lanes that we were working on for us from Airport Road to Jersey Pike.
Was that a subliminal message?
He knows what I'm saying. So,
Okay.
so it'd be included in this, correct?
I will defer to him. I'm assuming he's working on it hard.
I appreciate it, Blight. The 5 lanes. Thank you.
And that's how we work, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you,
Okay.
Councilman. Councilwoman Coonrod, see your light.
Thank you, Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
John?
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question because it's not on the 3 o'clock agenda.
Yeah.
But the form-based code appeal that we're gonna be discussing at 6, can you give me some information on that, why they're appealing?
I would actually, is Donna here? That's probably, I would defer to Donna's team on that, or Dallas? Did you want to?
I'll present those this evening.
Yeah, I just wanted to know ahead of time what was the issue, so I could, but if you wanna wait till 6, that's fine.
There were presentations that were attached in the minutes. So they just want some relief for some requirements in the form-based code.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I saw it in the minutes, but I'm not just a visual person. Sometimes I like to hear it said. Yeah, thank you.
Dallas,
We do have a
I can
full
help.
case.
The form-based code, as you guys know, is a zoning designation, and we have a form-based code committee that hears all of the cases that staff cannot approve per the ordinances. There are some requests for projects that staff has the ability to approve without taking it to the form-based code committee. If the request from the applicant includes details that we as a staff are not authorized to approve per the ordinance, it goes to the form-based code committee. The committee reviews the applicant's request based on their project, and then they vote as to whether or not it should be approved. You have 2 coming before you where staff and the form-based code committee the form-based code committee voted to not approve. And the process that we have allows for those applicants to come before this body to see if you would approve them after the vote has been made by the form-based code committee. So you have 2 of them, and the reason Dallas is directing you toward the handout is it's kind of technical, but they've done a real good job of just stating why. The first one, or one of them, is Adamson Developers for a project on 10th Street, and then the second one is for the Tennessee Valley Federal Credit Union. And you'll see comments from the Form-Based Code Committee, and those comments will be tied back to the ordinances. The ones that our staff provides anyway, is tied back to the ordinances. So essentially, that's a long way of saying that both staff and the Form-Based Code Committee sees each of these projects as non-conforming as it relates to the form-based code.
Yep. And we will hear this fully at 6.
Yes.
Yep. Thank you, Donna.
Thank you.
Councilman Gilbert, you have one more comment?
And for Ms. Donna Williams, they went back to her seat. On the form-based code, is
Yes, sir.
the committee, are the individual that lives in the form-based area, or is it anyone that goes onto this committee?
The folks who are on the form-based code committee?
Yes.
Yeah, there are people that are appointed by the council. Each of the council district that has form-based code within its district appoints someone.
So it is people
And-
from the form-based.
Yeah, and there are also professionals, folks who are in the professions of construction, architecture, engineering, try to get a real good mix of that. I think are there 7 of them?
There are 9.
There are nine of them.
And you have architects, developers, contractors, people that live there, and I guess people that own property that these projects directly affect.
either you own property or you got expertise in the field, or you live in the form-based code area, you can be
Correct.
on this committee, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, thanks.
All right, thank you, Councilman. Councilman Byrd, you snuck a light in there.
Donna, if a person doesn't live in a form-based code committee and on for, how do we can I get a list of the people that's on the committee or in
On the form-based code committee?
Yes, ma'am.
Sure. We'd be happy to print that for you. All of the boards and commissions within the city, I think there are 40-something of them. They're on the city's website, but we'd be more than happy to print those for you so you don't have to go through that. Okay. Oh, Dallas has it right
Well,
here.
here's the makeup. I don't have the list of, form-based committee must be composed of 9 rotating members set forth as follows. I think you guys are gonna have a chance to actually approve two new members tonight. A is architect, urban designer, landscape architect. B is architect, urban designer, landscape architect. C position is architect, urban designer, landscape architect who resides or whose office is located in the downtown form-based area. D, developer, realtor, banker, civil engineer, contractor, somebody in one of those fields. E is developer, realtor, banker, civil engineer, contractor. F is developer, realtor, banker, engineer, whose office is located in the downtown form-based code area, and property owner, resident, business owner within the form-based code area. That's the makeup of the,
Thank you.
those are the position that they must hold to be considered for the committee.
Either office or live. Either
Well, not necessarily. Architects, the first 2 architects, urban designers, or landscape architect can be from anywhere, but they have to have a background in design so they understand what's being asked for.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you, Mr. Rucker. Mr. Gilbert, is that you again?
Yes, sir, Mr. Rucker. Mr.
It's
Rucker.
like a Christmas tree up here right now.
Yes, sir.
The professionals that's on this board, can they bid on anything in the form-based area if they're on the board?
The first couple,
Can they do work in that area?
oh, yeah, yes, sir.
Of course.
Yes, sir.
So they could be on the board and
And
work.
do work in that area. Yes, sir.
And can it be, what about if it's a subject where it's potential where they're going to be building?
If
Or-
they
or
are, what usually happens, if they are involved in any way with the project that's asking for a deep modification, then they would recuse themselves like somebody on the zoning board of appeals that is involved with a property that's asking for rezoning. They would recuse themselves so that there's no perception of, what do you call it, Mr.? Impropriety, yes, sir.
So
Yes,
it'd be a
sir.
volunteer stepping aside, correct?
Sir,
A
are the-
volunteer stepping aside if they had some.
Yeah, that has what I have seen of all the boards I deal with. The Construction Board of Appeals, there's a bunch of contractors on there. Somebody's asking for a construction variant or variance to one of the building codes, and they're involved in the project. Even if it's a building code requirement and they're doing the plumbing on the job, they'll recuse themselves, so there's no way impropriety involved in that. Now, do I know every job everybody's involved in, and can we tell, that's part of their ethics to say, hey, I'm involved, I'm gonna step down and not vote on this, so,
I appreciate it, sir. Thank you.
yes, sir.
Thank you, Councilman.
May I add something, Mr. Chair? The city established a code of ethics under I think it was the first year of Mayor Burke's term, and all of our boards and commissions go through a training which speaks very specifically to code of ethics and what we expect them to do if they feel like such a conflict has surfaced, and that's the case again for the 40+ boards and commissions that have anywhere from 6 to 12 people on them. So there are about 500 plus people, citizens that serve on a volunteer basis that have agreed to adhere to that.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Coonrod, did you sneak back in there too?
Yes, real quick, I was part of the Christmas light. But I do have a question, and I just want to make sure I understand it clearly. So you're saying the individuals on this particular board can either live in the form-based code area or have an office space within the area, correct?
Part of them have to. Some of them just have to be a professional within the architect,
In that field?
in design, architect, engineer, landscape architect, because all those are things that are required by the form-based code. So we need a certain amount of experts to, you know, to consider, is this a real request or just somebody doesn't want to do what it's asking or something like that.
So do you know if there's any African American on this particular board?
There are two.
There are two African American professionals, both male. One is a general contractor, and the other one is a developer and realtor.
What's their name?
The first one is Ladale Peoples, and the second one is Marcus Jones.
Okay, and how long are the terms for, and are any of those appointments expired at this time?
One has, Councilman Mitchell has he already? I think last Tuesday he appointed Marcus Jones, and I don't think Ladale's is up for expiration for a couple of years or so, but I'm not sure.
And then you have two tonight because terms have expired.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You good, Councilwoman?
Well, how do we get notification of when the terms expired and someone can get put on that board?
So of all the boards and commissions, we use a system called Granicus. And so anybody, if you Google City of Chattanooga boards, commissions, whatever, on the city's website, it lists all of the boards and commissions. It lists the name of the folks who are on that board or commission. It lists when their term expires. And then anybody who has any interest whatsoever in any of those boards can submit their application via Granicus, or this body and or the mayor's office can make recommendations and encourage folks to go and apply, just to apply via Granicus, so that we can keep all the information in one place. So if there are folks who have some desire to serve on any of those boards or commissions, they can go online and submit their application.
So whose responsibility is it to update that list? Because it's a lot of expired terms and boards on there that's not even active. And how who updates that?
Yeah, the list, the way that some of the boards and commissions work is, say for instance, some of them are really difficult to find. One of the more difficult one is the Historic Zoning Commission. It has been very specific, like Dallas was describing before for this one. It has very specific classifications of who can serve in each of the seats. That's given to us by the state. So we have a really difficult time placing the folks from the Historic Zoning Commission because we're following state guidelines. And so some of those folks, sometimes they will have expired, but they're still serving while we find someone who has the expertise and the desire to take that seat.
Well, just update it as they still fulfilling the role. I mean,
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
just update it as if they're continuing on instead of showing expired. Like, I made some boards on there that's been outdated since before I became on council.
Okay, well, we'll have somebody look into that. And if you have someone who's interested and qualify for any of those, they can go on Granicus and make that known. And then they're matched with the council, the commission or board that they've expressed an interest in, and then we try to find a seat for them.
All right, thank you.
Particularly if they see something that's expired, you know.
Thank you, Donna. Thank you, Councilwoman. I'm sensing we might need a overview on how board appointments work in the near future. So I'll be reaching out to Chairman Smith and see where we could fit that in, if you don't mind. Any other comments or questions before we adjourn to 6?
Did you want to have something to say?
Except for Maura.
No, thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. No, I was just saying we'd be glad to do that presentation for you at your strategic planning meeting or to 3 o'clock.
Very good.
Whichever you'd
I'll
like.
get with Chairman Smith. I think it'll be a wonderful idea.
Great, thanks.
Thank you very much. If no other comments, we will adjourn till 6.